Live right here on a Monday on the early line. The day is Monday, February 19th. It's President's Day weekend, but we're already looking forward to next year in the National Football League because over this weekend, conference championship odds have become available on the lovely FanDuel Sportsbook. We had the Super Bowl 59 prices. We had NFL MVP odds for next year. Now we dive even deeper into the conference perspective for 2024 in the National Football League. We start with the NFC, where the San Francisco 49ers are already a very short favorite. It is February, Donnie, and San Francisco has a plus 230 price to win the NFC Championship. Less than a 2.5 to 1 number at plus 230. Less than half of everybody else around the NFC. Is that too drastically short on San Francisco before this offseason even really plays out?
Yes, it's way too drastically short here at this point because there is something called that Super Bowl hangover. It is harder to get back to the Super Bowl the following season. The NFL makes it harder on you, whether it's going to be a salary cap issue that you're going to have, whether you don't get that top draft pick that you always wanted, and also now you're going to play a first-place schedule as you move forward. And, oh, yeah, your running back, who's notoriously being known for getting a lot of carries and being injured when completely healthy basically through this season, he's not going to do it again next year. That's a crazy price to pay, at least right now, plus 230, Ben.
You're tying up your money for nearly 11 months, 11 and a half months on a plus 230 price before a single snap of football has even been played, before we have done anything in the offseason outside of the coaching carousel. That's a drastically short number. I don't disagree with the 49ers being booked as the favorites once again. They've been in the NFC Championship game 4 of the previous 5 seasons. They've appeared in 2 of the last 5 Super Bowls, but that's a really short price. But one of the good things about a short price on one means then there is value on others. There's just going to be longer odds than maybe the market really needs to have at this point. So the Lions in the Cowboys, tied for the second best price at 6 to 1. The Eagles, fourth best number at plus 800. The Packers round out the top 5 at 10 to 1. Where would your value pick be at this moment, Donnie, knowing, again, it's late February of 2024, but where would that value lie with you? I know where I'm going.
Yeah, to be honest, it's probably going to be, and it's not really a homer pick for me, the Philadelphia Eagles, because you like the team that's on that wave that, sort of crashed down at the end of the season. And you say moving forward, like, what can you anticipate? Well, again, the schedule's probably going to look decently tough here. The Eagles were okay last year. Why? Because they had a great start, but sort of crashed down the stretch. But the one thing that was always plaguing the Eagles was, hey, what happened to Jalen Hurts at this point? Why wasn't he as good down the stretch as he was the previous year? Well, Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator / quarterback coach, really didn't help his cause here and cause a lot of confidence in the room, if you would like. They were talking about maybe more of a friendlier friendship here as opposed to a coach / player relationship. Now you move on to get Kellen Moore. That's an instant upgrade right here. The defense, who couldn't look, sometimes in the NFL, it's not always about the players on the field. You have to have a great scheme, some great X's and O's. The Eagles obviously had 0 X's and O's last year on defense. Vic Fangio comes in. So I do think the Eagles are a better version already without even adding into the offseason just by making those coaching decisions here. So I look at the Eagles last year. If you had said, hey, by the way, Eagles an 8 to 1 price here to win the NFC, you'd have jumped right on it. I think the Eagles will have a quality season next year, and I think that price point is valid to take away. So for me, looking at that next tier of teams, it's the Eagles for me that probably make the most sense just based on that price point here, Ben.
Me as well. I think Philadelphia is going to be back in the NFC Championship game next year at an 8 to 1 number. I think the big issue for Nick Sirianni and crew this year was the drop-off in coordinators. So who do you go out and get at the offensive coordinator? Kellen Moore, who I still think is one of the bright stars in terms of offensive play calling in the National Football League. And in my estimation, Donnie, there is no better defensive coordinator that you can have to focus strictly on defense than Vic Fangio, who makes his way back to Philadelphia. I think that is going to be key for the Eagles. We'll get back into those NFC title odds in just a moment, but a bit of breaking news here during the NBA All-Star break on this Monday morning. The Brooklyn Nets, after a 21-33 start to this season, have fired head coach Jacque Vaughn. Of course, he became the interim head coach early last year in November after Steve Nash was fired from Brooklyn following a chaotic beginning to last season and a tenure really for this Nets organization. Jacque Vaughn last year in 75 games, 43 and 32. The Nets were a playoff team, swept, of course, after a ton of changes and at the trade deadline, getting rid of Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, but they still made the playoffs, swept by the Philadelphia 76ers. With that young core this year, it's been a year of struggles, 12 games below 500. Brooklyn makes a change at their head coaching spot. The Nets dismissing Jacque Vaughn on this Monday morning.
Yeah, good luck to the next head coach that comes in there and then will be dismissed in a year and a half as well. But that's the job of the NBA. You're hired to be fired. So maybe in the grand scheme of things, Jacque Vaughn did win because he probably got a 3 to 4 year deal. He'll get paid out probably at least another 2 years. He'll get to go coach another NBA team and be on the bench there and try to see if he can be a head coach once again in the association. That is a tough, unless you are one of the teams that is supposed to win. And you know who was supposed to win? Milwaukee. You know what their coach did? Have one of the best records in the NBA and still got fired only a couple months into his tenure. That's just the life of a head coach in the NBA. Don't feel bad for these guys. They get paid well to get fired.
Yeah, the Brooklyn Nets had so much optimism, of course, over the past few seasons, having the big three, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. They hardly ever played together, a failed experiment inside the Barclays Center. But the Nets now are going to be at the bottom of the NBA. It will be interesting in the big market that is Brooklyn and the greater New York City area, who they are able to lure and attract as that next head coach. Jacque Vaughn had been a member of the organization since 2016-17, 8 years as an assistant coach, was in his 9th year last year after Steve Nash was dismissed. Jacque Vaughn named the interim head coach, permanent head coach later into the year, and of course was the head coach to begin this season, 21 and 33. It feels as though changes are coming from the Nets moving forward, maybe in terms of the roster next season. That's going to be the case for Brooklyn. So, as things stand for the Nets, we'll continue to detail any further updates that come, who is named the interim head coach, and maybe some speculation for the full-time head coach moving forward. Back to the NFC championship odds that are now available in the National Football League. 8-1 price on the Eagles, I agree. Let's focus on the tied for second prices, Detroit and Dallas. The Lions, a historic 2023 NFL season. And the odds favorable once again after the retention, I should say, of Ben Johnson as the OC and Aaron Glenn on the other side as the defensive coordinator. Detroit reached an NFC championship game for the first time in 32 years, had a 24-7 halftime lead trying to get to their first ever Super Bowl, ultimately falling just short in disappointing fashion. The largest ever comeback in a conference championship game in NFL playoff history. The Cowboys have only known disappointment in the NFL postseason. And I will say the same thing I said at the beginning of last year, the same thing I said 2 years ago at this point. I am not going to bet my money, Donnie's money, my worst enemy's money, on the Cowboys to win a conference championship as they continue to fail to reach the conference championship. 13 years they have made the playoffs since their last Lombardi trophy in 1995. They have never once reached the NFC championship game in that span.
He's always going to be tough, but the thing I do like here is I guess Jerry's now putting on everybody on notice. We're not getting any contract extensions. Nobody's going to be looking towards that safety net of I have a couple more years to go, which includes your head coach and also your quarterback. The only question is he actually going to push all those chips to the middle of the table and really bust up that salary cap to add another player or two to try to double down? If not, we're not trusting the Dallas Cowboys, Ben, as you said, and rightfully so. The question marks, though, do come up in Detroit, who I was all ready to kick that stone all the way down the street and say, hey, Detroit's going to be a long way for another NFC championship chance again. But the fact that Ben Johnson came back here, that is a massive win, maybe the biggest win of the offseason for any team in the NFC, just getting him back as your coach, not losing him to another organization. It'll be interesting to see how Jared Goff, again, getting an extension this offseason, how big it's going to be, and also how they can compete with that new upstart NFC North, which has a lot of younger teams now looking to make that next move, Ben.
The NFC up in the air, the AFC gauntlet conference championship odds next.